The wilderness held an unnatural stillness, the kind that made battle-hardened soldiers uneasy. Sand particles coated their faces while perspiration stung their vision, each man's tension wound as tight as a bowstring ready to snap. For 6 grueling weeks, this Navy SEAL unit had endured the unforgiving terrain. Their spirits were breaking, energy depleted, and what started as a routine operation had spiraled into catastrophe. Their commanding officer, Blake Harlow, was known for keeping his composure when chaos erupted around him. His squad didn't just depend on him for survival, they relied on him to keep them grounded. Tonight, however, that familiar burden felt heavier than ever before. Once again, their intel had proven worthless. The high-value target had vanished from the suspected location. What they discovered instead was a well-armed insurgent force that had encircled the entire valley, sealing every possible exit. The team found themselves caught in a deadly trap, pinned down by relentless machine gun bursts from elevated positions while mortar shells exploded perilously nearby. "Commander, they've got us completely surrounded," Ramirez breathed, the team's newest member pressing himself against the crumbling wall fragments. "Without aerial backup, we're not making it out." Harlow's muscles tensed. What they desperately needed was an aviator, but not just anyone willing to fly. They required someone capable of navigating through razor-sharp mountain peaks while enemy projectiles filled the air. Someone who could transform certain death into miraculous escape, reaching for his communication device. He forced his voice to remain controlled despite his racing pulse. "Phantom actual calling. Combat pilot required immediately. Requesting urgent close air assistance." Static electricity filled the airwaves. 10 agonizing heartbeats ticked by, moments that stretched into eternity. Finally, a response emerged through the interference. Gentle, measured, almost inappropriately serene for such a violent setting, acknowledged Phantom Actual. "En route to your position." Every SEAL went rigid. The voice was delicate, controlled, nearly a murmur. This wasn't the typical rough, combat-seasoned pilot they expected to hear. There was no urgency, as if the deadly situation below held no significance whatsoever. Harlow pressed his transmitter. "What's your call sign?" "We're hemmed in by steep rock faces on either flank. Zero visibility for approach vectors and anti-aircraft fire is saturating the airspace." "Can you handle these conditions?" A brief silence followed, then that same tranquil response, like a confidence exchanged between kindred spirits amid the tempest. "I never miss my target." The soldiers shared meaningful looks. Ramirez exhaled a quiet sound of amazement. "That's a female pilot, Commander." Gender meant nothing to Harlow in this moment. But something about her composure, that unwavering confidence, this aviator was unlike any they'd encountered before. She didn't bellow with bravado like the others. Her words came like the hurricane itself bending to her command. Soon after, the darkness above erupted with the roar of aircraft engines. A shadowy form blazed across the stars, flying dangerously low and impossibly swift. Raven had arrived on station. The insurgents unleashed everything in their arsenal. Glowing ammunition trails reached skyward. Missiles screamed through the atmosphere, yet the aircraft flowed between them, gliding through the firestorm as if the pilot could predict each incoming threat. "Incredible, did you witness that maneuver?" Ramirez whispered in disbelief. The fighter jet carved a devastating path, raining destruction upon the ridge positions. Explosive ordnance crashed into hostile locations, sending tremors through the valley basin. Yet this wasn't wild, indiscriminate bombardment. Each strike, every projectile seemed deliberately chosen, positioned precisely where destruction was required. Nothing wasted, nothing careless. Raven. That was textbook precision. Harlow transmitted with genuine admiration. Her calm acknowledgement returned, unchanged from before. "As I mentioned, I don't miss." With Raven providing cover from above, the SEALs advanced with renewed confidence. The battle's momentum reversed. They shattered the enemy's stranglehold, racing forward beneath her protective strikes. Then the unthinkable occurred. A fresh wave of militia reinforcements poured into the valley from the northern approach, trapping them once more. "Commander, we're completely encircled," Ramirez reported. Fear creeping into his expression, Harlow activated his radio. Raven, we need another attack run, but our people are intermixed with the enemy. You cannot engage without illuminate your locations. Raven cut through his transmission, maintaining her trademark serenity. I'll handle everything else. The soldiers activated infrared beacons on their equipment. Hostile gunfire saturated the valley floor. There was zero room for miscalculation. A single error would mean destroying the very troops she'd come to rescue. The aircraft plunged downward. Reality seemed to decelerate. Through the maze of glowing tracers and detonations, Raven's fighter became a ghostly sword, dissecting the combat zone with supernatural accuracy. Every round struck mere inches from their beacon lights, yet never once endangered them. She descended so close the soldiers felt the air currents buffeting their protective gear. The militia forces crumbled under her assault. Within moments, quiet returned to the valley. True silence this time, the kind purchased only through combat and loss. The SEALs emerged from cover, traumatized but breathing. Raven, that was ... Harlow's words faltered as overwhelming relief struck him. That should have been impossible. Through the static came a gentle exhale. Then, not impossible, simply required. The connection terminated. The soldiers never encountered her face to face. Not during that mission, not in any future operation. She vanished as mysteriously as she'd appeared, absorbed back into the star-filled void, yet her reputation endured. Among veterans who had witnessed countless battles, her understated declaration became legendary. I never miss my target. Years afterward, survivors of that valley engagement continued sharing Raven's story. Some insisted she possessed abilities beyond human capability, that such flying skills were impossible. Others theorized she was some warrior spirit, manifesting only when defeat seemed inevitable. A select few wondered if she was simply an aviator who wielded silence as her greatest weapon. Woman who transformed whispers into deliverance. For Commander Harlow, only one reality mattered. When the SEAL leader desperately called for aerial support while hopelessness weighed heavier than the desert darkness itself, her understated response amazed everyone present, and ultimately rescued them all. So as you listen to this account, let her legacy serve as a powerful reminder. Champions don't always announce themselves with thunder. Often the most formidable voices speak in hushed tones. Frequently, the most lethal precision comes from composed hands that others underestimate. And occasionally, the distinction between survival and destruction rests in barely audible words. If this narrative moved you, if you experience that emotional turbulence within your soul, don't allow it to fade away here. Pass along this experience. Share your reflections in the discussion below. And if you value tales of dedication, bravery, and the invisible forces that alter destiny, remember to subscribe, because somewhere in the world, perhaps at this very moment, another raven is speaking softly into the darkness once again.